Welcome back to the City Current Show. I'm your host, Jeremy Park. We're always honored to bring you inspiring stories of individuals and organizations making a difference, empowering the good. And we love talking about youth villages. We're honored to be joined by their CEO, Pat Lawler. How are you doing?
Great. How about you?
Doing well. We love everything you're doing and making a difference in so many different ways. We'll talk about a new podcast, and we'll also talk about Memphis Allies, a gun violence initiative, but we'll talk about those a little bit later on. Give us, for starters, a little bit of history, a little bit of context around youth villages overall.
Youth villages, we care for emotionally troubled young people, primarily young people in danger of being removed from their families and placed in child welfare, juvenile justice systems, and returning them back to their families safely with community-based programs. We also have residential treatment programs. We have two large facilities here in Memphis and one in Douglasville, Georgia. And we also provide a program called Life Set for young people aging out of the child welfare system. Those are our three largest programs. We have programs and offices in 101 locations across 23 states in the district, and about 3,600 staff. And we serve about 36,000 young people and families a year.
Yeah, I mean, that's tremendous when you look at not only the impact here in the Mid-South, but literally, as you mentioned, all around the nation. And give us a little bit of illustration. You talk about the youth that you serve. Obviously, they've gone through a lot. Paint the picture of kind of what they're dealing with and give us an idea of just the youth that you work with, you and your team.
Pretty much, it's a broad array of young people and families with problems from birth to 23. Now, that does not include our new initiative called Memphis Allies, which we're also working with adults. But for the Youth Village's original programs are pretty much birth to 22, 23, and that's for kids aging out of the foster care system, the older young people. It's everything from abuse, neglect, trauma. Every kind of diagnosis and presenting problem you can imagine. We serve those young people and their families. A lot of these young people have grown up, bouncing around from a family member to family member, foster homes, institutional care, psychiatric hospitals, group homes. Their families have not been stable. Their families have, a lot of their family members are in and out of prison. A lot of these young people are raised by maybe grandparents or other family members and friends, and maybe even older siblings. Just a lot of just disruption throughout their lives. And if you can think of a problem that a young person has, we're taking care of them. It's just like I said, it's a broad array of young people with a variety of problems.
This will lead us to the podcast, Stronger Than You Think, and we'll talk about that in depth. But talk about your team, because when you look at the success you're having, so much of it is your team and those who are serving as volunteers, but literally pouring into the youth. And so talk about your team.
Yeah, we have a great team of staff. The people that work in this field it's not just a job, it's a lifestyle. I mean, it's a full-time commitment. It doesn't leave you when you go home at 5 o'clock. For the most part, our staff don't go home at 5 o'clock. They work a variety of hours to meet the needs of young people and families. Over 1,000 of our staff have master's degrees. We have over 100 who are licensed. The great majority of our staff do have bachelor's degree, although we do hire people without bachelor's degree for several positions in our organization as well. But they are the heartbeat of this organization. They are the secret sauce of the organization by far. I mean, our staff's commitment to young people and families and willing to make a sacrifice to serve those young people and their families is just very, very important for the kind of staff that we are.
Talk about what led you to launch the podcast, and we'll start there. So describe the podcast and then talk about what led you to launch the podcast.
Well, the podcast basically just interviewing staff where they share their experiences. And, we're hopeful other people will see the podcast or hear the podcast and maybe have an interest in coming working for youth villages one day, because like everybody now, we need employees. And we felt like having our own staff share their story. And if you've heard some, it's not just their experience in youth villages, it's some of their personal story and why they're so committed and passionate about this work. And we started the podcast because basically, podcasts are becoming more and more popular. People are listening to them. We're looking for every way to get our message out there. to communicate to people that might be interested in this work or just learning more about youth villages. And that's just a new forum just to share our story. And Sam does a great job with them. And our plan is continue to share a podcast weekly over the next year.
What's interesting is it shares the story of youth villages, but it also too allows you and the other team members to get to know each other better too. So I think there's a lot of layers to the podcast in terms of the impact that it has. Share a little bit of that dynamic in terms of getting to know your team better, as well as sharing the story of youth villages and promoting, how amazing it is to work youth villages.
I've learned so much from the podcast, and I don't know all the people that have done the podcast for a large organization. I know a few of them, but I didn't know their story. I mean, Mary's telling this story that she participated in the Olympic trials like 25 years ago. I go, Mary, I had no idea you were, a 400 runner. I had no idea of your Olympic trial, and your history of running and track as being a track athlete. And I've heard other staff members' story about some of the trauma that they've gone through in their life before coming to work here. I've enjoyed it. I've got a kick out of listening to all of them myself, because it's hard to get to know so many staff and to be able to listen 30, 35 minutes to their story with really insightful, probing questions. It's been fun. It's been fun.
When you look at it from an audience perspective, what do you hope the audience takes away? Obviously, learning more about the impact for youth villages and the opportunity to be a team member, the importance there. But what do you hope, aside from that listeners take away from the experience of the podcast?
Yeah, well, I hope they get a feel of one, the kind of person that's working with the young people here. Because really, we can have nice buildings, we can have nice processes and procedures, but it really all comes down to who are the staff working directly with those young people and those families. And so it gives them a feel of the commitment staff have, but also I'm hoping it sparks some interest in them thinking, this might be something that I would like to do one day, or maybe even apply for a job currently, because these people seem to love their work. They're passionate about it. There's career opportunities. There's a lot of training and support in helping build that staff person up, and not just be a better person working with young people, but maybe take on a position of responsibility. So, I'm hoping it's like I said, it lights a fire in them to maybe be interested in this kind of work, and especially maybe coming to youth villages.
And to your point, so many personal stories, overcoming adversity. To me, there's empathy, respect. There's so many different nuances. And I just think overall, it's a little bit of an exciting pivot. It's a great opportunity for you to talk about your team members and put them front and center, while also promoting youth villages. And I think for other organizations, it's just a really neat model in terms of putting your team front and center, getting to know them, at the same time elevating, the brand of youth villages. And so once again, the podcast is Stronger Than You Think, and you can find it obviously on your website. And so youthvillages.org is an easy place to find that and dive in deeper. Let's switch over and talk about Memphis Allies. And you mentioned that's an opportunity to work with youth and adults. And I mentioned at the onset, really around gun violence and curbing gun violence. Give us some context around Memphis Allies, and then we'll dive in deeper.
Yeah, well, Memphis Allies is a new initiative we started a little over 2 years ago. At least we started building a plan a little over 2 years ago. But it's really an initiative to reduce gun violence in our community. Our city has the second highest rate per capita of murder in the country, only behind Baltimore. Now, this is for large cities. Our murder rate per capita is almost twice as high as Chicago. And while most people think it's young people committing most of the gun violence, and we actually did it first as well, once we got the data, we were surprised to learn the average age person convicted and charged with murder is 28 years old. And only 10% of the people involved in gun violence are under the age of 18. And about half of those are young people just caught up in crossfire, maybe an infant or toddler. Unfortunately, you read about it every day. So, we're having over the last 3 years, we've had a person killed about every 25, 26 hours in our city, and a young person about every 10 or 11 days. And we decided that our mission as an organization is to help children and families live successfully. And so many of the kids that are coming in our programs now, and so many families we're working with, are just overwhelmed by the trauma of gun violence in their communities. So we said, look, if we're going to really have an impact in this community, we need to go further upstream and try to slow this down. And so we basically have had an enormous effort to build a plan and implement a program along with other organizations. This is not just a Youth Villages initiative. This is called Memphis Allies because we have ally partners. And our first two partners are working with us in the Raleigh-Fraser area. Is Lifeline to Success and Neighborhood Christian Center. They each have a team of staff, and we have a team of staff. And so, yeah, we're excited about moving forward, and we're moving soon into the Orange Mound area.
You're using a switch model. So talk about switch, what it stands for, and what that means as a model. Okay.
Memphis Allies is the overall initiative. And the overall initiative is more than just reducing gun violence, it's helping rebuild kind of the culture and enhancing the fabric of these communities that have been just beaten down by many challenges over the last few decades. But switch is the model, the model we're using to work with these young people and these adults as well. It stands for Support with Intention to Create Hope. It's an acronym, but switch is also a crude device you can put on like a Glock gun and make it become an automatic weapon. And we're trying to switch our lifestyle, switch it up a little bit, change the way they live. But right now we're working with 90 participants. You know, the goal is to first identify the highest risk people involved in gun violence. They've been shot or shot at in the last 12 to 18 months. A family member or friend have been shot at the last 12 or 18 months. They're in a gang, crew, or clique. They're probably not working or going to school, and they've had a history in the criminal justice system. And so we're identifying the highest risk people first, and then we connect with them. We have to build a relationship with them, and that's not easy. And then we provide the services for these young people and adults. Right now, we're working with 90 people in the Raleigh-Fraser area. 39 are called participants. They're the ones fully engaged, and the other group is basically in the outreach phase. We're trying to build a better relationship with them to bring them in, because when they come in, they have to sign a bunch of documents saying they're not going to be involved in gun violence. They're going to be clean social media. They're going to come for individual group and and counseling. They're going to be part of the initiative that involves volunteering, that involves job training skills, that may involve working on GED. Each of these people will have a life plan. And I often say young men, but that we have about 20% of the people in the program are women. It's not just young men involved in gun violence or young adults. It's also women as well. So that's kind of where we are now in the Raleigh-Fraser area.
What's been the feedback so far from those who are participating? And obviously we're still early on, but what's been the feedback kind of leading into expectations for the future?
We spent a year building our plan, and we traveled to 5 cities, Oakland, Stockton, New York, DC, and Chicago. And those 5 cities have the best and I guess the most respected gun violence interventions. And we learned a lot. But one thing they said, most people involved in gun violence want out. They just don't know how to get out. Okay, they don't know the way out. So most of our staff have grown up in these same neighborhoods, have been involved in the same clique, gangs, and crews. A lot of our staff have been to jail, so they understand the life, and so they connect with these men and women, and serve as mentors to them. So far, the response has been overwhelming. I mean, I've met a lot of our participants. I met a lot of the guys and women in outreach too, and so far they're just excited that they have that. They're just shocked. We're in their apartment complexes. We're having events in their apartment complexes. We're giving food out. We're playing music. We're giving prizes out. We're right in the heart of where all the most violent areas of our city are, in their neighborhoods, and they said nobody's ever done this before, and we're introducing them to obviously Memphis Allies, and so that's how we're identifying who the high-risk people are. That's one way. We have other ways as well, but yeah, it's been very, very supportive. I mean, if you met with any of these people and heard their stories, they are tragic. They are just tragic, and obviously some of the men and women are just getting to know us and build those relationships with us and trying to trust us. It's a new initiative, as you know. But it's going very, very well. I've been shocked. I mean, I've had more young men and women, most are in their 20s, a few in their early 30s, just come hug me and thank me and tell me how much they appreciate it. They'll talk about their life coach. They'll talk about their case manager. They'll talk about their counselor. They'll talk about the outreach worker, and just talk about, and they come into our site 2 and 3 and 4 times a week, some of them. And it's also a safe place for them too. Most of these guys, it's called swivel on a head. They're worried about, they've been involved so much in gun violence. They're worried about somebody coming after them. So it's been wonderful. So we're still learning. We have a lot to learn, but it's been great so far.
How can the community help your efforts?
Well, I think first of all, just knowing about our efforts and understanding, you'll hear people say, well, they just need to get a job. Why don't they finish their high school diploma? Understand that these people have grown up in violence their entire life. Okay, this has been a part of their life. Going to hospitals, going to courts, visiting a family member in jail, going to funerals, ducking in your house, going to a safe space when gunfire breaks out in your neighborhood. And so understand this is not going to be an easy thing to fix, so to speak, or to reduce quickly. It's going to take us time. It's going to take us years. But we are out there doing everything that evidence has shown works and other people have used. I'm talking about not just other organizations, but all the data, all the research scientists say this is what to do. I think that if you know of someone in danger of gun violence, you can contact us. Right now, we're primarily working in the Raleigh-Fraser area, although we are going to be expanding the Orange Mountain area soon. If you have want to offer a job to someone that maybe have a felony, maybe let us know about that too. We're looking for jobs for a lot of these guys. But we will be coming throughout the community looking for volunteers to support, especially a lot of these events we're having, because we have a lot more as we expand. We have community relations staff, but we're still building a better plan to really utilize volunteers. So that's also, and let me say this, these are not safe areas of the city, and we are not working with safe people. And so we want to be sure when we do start engaging volunteers, they understand the risks, and we're putting them in an environment where they're not put at some level of risk as well.
Let's go back to youth villages, talk about how we can help youth villages overall. Back to the podcast, obviously promoting job opportunities and, the talent pipeline, so to speak, but how can we help youth villages?
Well, we always are looking for employees. I mean, we are looking for good staff, and we have a variety of opportunities with, whether you have a degree or you don't have a degree, whether you have a master's degree, or even what your experience is like. We have a variety of opportunities there. We're always looking for good foster families. We have a large foster care program. We need foster families. We need adoptive families. We also need volunteers. I mean, there's a lot of volunteer opportunities. You can go on our website. And there's a lot of ways to volunteer. Of course, we're always raising money. We've received a little government money from Memphis Allies, but 90% of it has all been fundraising. And we also have several programs. Our program for young people aging out of foster care, most of the money for that program comes from fundraising efforts. And so it was started with a grant years ago from the Day Foundation. So, those are probably the best ways. And just, go on our website, learn more about our work, and share our story with others.
Well, go ahead and mention the website again. Where do we go to learn more about youth villages?
Youthvillages.org. Yeah.
Well, Pat, greatly appreciate all you and your amazing team do. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Jeremy.